Welcome back to episode 6 of From the Couch Sports. I am your host, Connor, and I got a lot I want to get into today. I'm very excited about the UFC card that's coming up this weekend, UFC 272, I believe. Colby Covington versus Jorge Masvidal is the headliner of this event. And I also want to get into some kind of NFL draft stuff. The NFL Combine has been going on this week. Just really the last 2 days are the days that we've seen, the on-field testing, which is really all the fans get to take a glimpse into. We don't really get to see like what's going on in those inside meetings or anything like that. But I want to get into some UFC to start things off. Um, Earlier this week, we're gonna start things off talking about the Cain Velasquez story, and then I want to get into the actual card and the fights that are coming up this weekend. But Cain Velasquez, former UFC champion, he was a champ for at one point he was known as this is the best heavyweight we've seen. When he was fighting Junior Dos Santos and everything like that, and then he had the whole fight in Mexico with Fabricio Verdum. He ended up losing the belt there, and then Verdum lost to Stipe, and then Cain kind of went through a lot of injury issues, and then he came back. Like, I want to say it was a 2-year hiatus of not fighting for 2 years. He comes back, and his first fight back is Francis Ngannou, and Francis, it was a Francis fight, so that was kind of the end of Cain's career. So we didn't really get to see what Cain versus Stipe would have looked like, which at the time would have been like the two greatest heavyweights up to that point for the most part. But Cain had this decorated MMA career, and all reports, everyone that knows him, they speak very highly of him. He's a great family man, and this issue kind of went down here in California, I believe, where basically one of Cain's family members had been, it's YouTube, so I want to keep it somewhat PG. His family member had been assaulted in an extreme way, repeatedly by a daycare guy, and the guy went to jail, and basically they released him right away. And Cain did what every good father in America would do, every good father worldwide. And not just father, because I don't even know if this is necessarily his own child. The reports are it's just his family. So I don't want to get into speak on something I don't know. I'm just talking about as far as what I've seen about the situation. I would hope that a lot of people would do this. Even if it's your niece, your nephew, your cousin. Family to me is very important. It's the most important thing to me. Family and God to me are the two most important things in my life. So, when it comes to Cain, apparently Cain chased this guy down 11 miles and then started shooting at him. And you got to imagine, former heavyweight champion of the world, he's chasing you down in the car. It's not a funny thing, but that is gotta be I don't know, in the group of the 20 scariest dudes on earth. You could say these, lightweights are scary to an extent when they're fighting other lightweights and stuff, but just overall, someone that's that big, and not to mention the fact that the dude driving the car did some serious stuff and he should not have been released. And our terrible judicial system that lets people get off scot-free for these kind of things, it needs a change. And Cain right now is sitting in jail being charged with attempted murder when he did what the state of California should have done, and that is try to end this man's life. And that's what should happen if you do things like this to kids. And, I think I speak for 99% of the population that 100% has Cain's back. I saw some real unity in the MMA community this week. I did see Derek Brunson, he raised I think $10,000 to go towards Cain, and Cain ended up getting a really good lawyer. So I really hope I'm praying that these things go good for Kane, that he's able to get released, and that the judicial system does what they should have done in the first place and punish the correct person in this situation. Because we as people should not have to act as police. But if the police don't do their job, then like what do we have to do, especially when it comes to our own families? If it's my family, I'm 100%. I'd be in the same position as Kane. And I think that I speak for a lot of men here in America, and I think they would do the same for their own family and their own kids. So, that's my take on the situation. I really hope I hope King gets out and things get better for him. This is a horrible situation. But like I said, this is the state's issue. You don't release a guy who should not only be doing life behind bars, but we should be questioning whether or not these people deserve to live, death penalty, or whether or not. And I don't even know if that's a California thing or not. Just my take on the situation. But on a lighter note, I want to get into the UFC card this weekend. A ton of really fun fights. We're gonna kick things off. Just talking about the main event. This one, I've been trying to think lately, like what's the outcome gonna be? Who's gonna be able to come up on top in this fight? Jorge Masvidal or Colby Covington? I've looked at a lot of different things. Obviously, both of these guys have faced the champ, Kamaru Usman, and they both lost. Now, the way they've lost it, it's been totally different. Colby Covington has been the closest to beating Kamaru. Both times his fights went to decision. I think both fights were very close. I think Kamaru won both fights, but not like he didn't outright dominate. It's probably 3 rounds to 2. And then especially in the second fight, like Usman dropped Covington and everything. So even that one, like Usman won, but Colby was very close. And outside of Gilbert Burns, like stunning Usman, like nobody really has been like that as of late fighting Usman. And Masvidal, his 2 fights, the first fight is the one he took on like super short notice. I think it was 6 days notice. It was a 5-round decision, kind of a boring fight. A lot of like clinch control. It wasn't a lot of stand-up fighting, a lot of toe stomps and things like that. I think that was like one of the fights where people were giving Usman some hate. And Colby, I think, has been one of these dudes that pushes some of these nicknames, but like the Kamaru Snoozman and things like that. But then like since then, Usman he's dominated every fight he's been in. He's either got a KO or it's been a super fun fight. And then he fought Masvidal again for the second time. This was on Masvidal's, full camp. And I think it was in the second round where he knocked Masvidal cold. And it was a brutal knockout. They had like those 8K cameras in there, and like you could see the sweat splatter off on the camera, and it was a crazy knockout. So both of these guys, they kind of had different fights with Usman, but like the whole thing is MMA math doesn't always work like that. Like just because Usman dominated Jorge doesn't mean that Colby's going to dominate Jorge just because he fought Usman closely. I think there's a couple things that I look at it. I don't think Colby has the ability to knock out Jorge on the feet, but I also don't think that Colby has the strength that Usman has to be able to hold him in positions. And Jorge really does have underrated grappling. His wrestling, and then, when Jorge's on his feet, he's got crazy power in both hands. He's a very fun fighter to watch. So, it's interesting to think, like, if I had to like make a prediction, I'd say I'm like probably 60% leaning towards Colby, probably by decision. But then there's like, there's a good chance to me, like, if these dudes do stand up, which I think they probably will, because I don't think Colby's just going to be able to take him down for 25 straight minutes. I think when they're standing up, I'd say like Jorge probably has the advantage, and he's got the power to put Colby's lights out, and he wants to. Like both of these dudes want to go in and get the kill. You get the whole backstory, former best friends and whatnot, and these guys hate each other. The last dude I could tell that Jorge truly hated was Ben Askren, and we saw how that happened. I do not think that Colby's going to shoot for a double leg within 5 seconds and get kneed in the face and knocked out. But like Colby could very well get knocked out in this fight. He's shown that like Usman dropped him in the last fight even, so it's like, could Masvidal put his lights out? Very real chance that happens. I wouldn't bet on it. I don't want to lose money on this fight. I think it could really go either way. I think both dudes are a ton of fun to watch. The press conference to me, I thought could have been way better. I don't think that their like styles of trash talk match up well. They're both trying to talk over each other. They're saying some of the same type of things, and it was just kind of corny. Like, we get it. You guys hate each other. We're excited to see what happens in the ring on Saturday. But that's just my take on it. Both guys, it's funny because they're both coming off of losses and they're headlining a pay-per-view. Colby recently lost to Usman, and in the fight before that, he beat Tyron Woodley. And then Jorge's coming off of 2 straight losses to Usman. And then before that was like his run in 2019. But here we are. We're in 2022. He fought once in 2021 and once in 2020 and once in 2021. So we'll see. I think it would be cool to see Jorge kind of get, some of that momentum back. In 2019, it was like, this dude is on top of the world, and, up and coming guy. Like, obviously not an up and coming as in like he's a young dude or anything, but like in terms of the hype, building another like superstar for MMA, he was definitely that dude. And I mean, if he goes out there and smokes Colby, he could be that dude again very quickly. I think the world would lose it. And Colby has a ton of haters, just because of the WWE persona that he carries and everything like that. So I'm sure that the world would love to see Masvidal knock him out. And then like to go over some of the other fights, we got RDA versus Moicano. This is a short notice fight. Rafael Fiziev, he got COVID. He was supposed to fight RDA, the battle of the Rafaels, who's the best in the UFC. And RDA is just game for whatever. He was basically like, anyone who's willing to step in the cage with me, I'm ready to go. This is a dude who fought a bunch of fights at 170. He used to be the champ at 155. And he's ready to go. Like, once that fight with Fiziev fell through, RDA was ready to go. Like, whoever's next, I'm ready. Moicano was the dude that was, willing to sign the contract. It's funny because he just fought on February 12th against Alexander Hernandez, and apparently, like, he was just on a flight back to Brazil. The plane lands. He's like, I want to take this fight. Pretty much right away flies right back to the U.S. And then he weighs in at 160, which it's only 5 pounds different than what he's normally used to weighing in. So that's crazy that he took that fight on such short notice. We are like it is a little bit of a bummer that, Islam Makhachev was supposed to be the dude to fight RDA. They have had that fight booked numerous times in the past, and it's always fallen through. Islam this week, like, decided to start tweeting. Maybe it wasn't Islam, it could have been Ali, but, he was tweeting, like, I'm ready to go. I'll jump in on, a week's notice, fight RDA. And it was like, dude, that's big, because, like, right now people have questions over the competition that Islam has fought. You can't really question the win streak and everything, but like the fact that he hasn't really beaten anybody that's in the top 5 or, really even, outside of Dan Hooker. I think Dan Hooker was ranked 6th or 7th when they fought. But he hasn't really had that top 5 opponent. And RDA is, I think he's fringe top 5. I want to say 6 right now. But he's a former champ. So like getting a win over RDA, I think does a little bit more than even getting a win over Dan Hooker. And, RDA was game. He's ready to do even 170, he said. Islam, like, says that he's ready to do it too. And then the next day, Dana comes out and says that Islam didn't want the fight. He just publicly said he did, but he didn't actually want the fight. And now it's like they're making Islam potentially fight Dariush again. Well, not again, but like potentially rebook that fight. And it's like, dude, you guys, Islam totally missed out because either he decided to tweet saying that he's interested in the fight that he wasn't interested in, or his manager had his social media account and possibly ruined his chance to fight for the belt. But I don't know. Obviously, there's multiple sides to the story, but the other thing to keep in mind is like this Gaethje Oliveira fight hasn't even happened yet. I don't even know if it's like officially booked, but that's kind of what's penciled in for the next fight. They're probably gonna fight sometime mid-year or so, from what I've heard. And even if Islam does rebook the fight against Dariush, we're sitting at the beginning of March, so there's a very real chance that that happens around the same time as the lightweight championship goes down. And if that were to happen, then that basically sets Islam up to fight for the belt next, which is what he wants anyways. He just needs to get another win against the toughest guy that he's ever fought. But I think he's probably still the favorite in that matchup, and I think that's a really fun fight. I definitely would want to see that, actually happen. But Moicano comes in. This dude's fun to watch. He's great jiu-jitsu fighter. I think he's got like most of his like finishes in his career are submissions. And then obviously RDA's former champ. He's got it all. I think this is going to be a very interesting fight. Moicano's making a big step up as far as like talent from what he's faced recently. But it's going to be fun to watch on short notice. It's at 160. And then kind of moving past that, let's talk some of the other fights here. So we got Edson Barbosa versus Bryce Mitchell. This is going to be a super fun fight. I kind of gave a little bit of my thoughts on like the whole interview that Bryce Mitchell had recently. Bryce Mitchell's he's an entertaining dude. He's practically undefeated. I think he's got one loss. I've tried to look like, if you look on SureDog or most of the MMA sites as far as the record goes, the only loss I've able to see is like a loss from not the Contender Series, from the Ultimate Fighter, which I thought was an exhibition. So, but the UFC like officially says he's 14-1. So, he's lost one fight. Barbosa is a veteran of the game. He's fought a bunch of dudes, mostly at lightweight. He moved down to 145. He's had some really good fights there. Recently, he lost to Giga. That's a stand-up war. But before that, he had the crazy knockout on Shane Burgos. That was like the delayed knockout. And then he had a fight against Dan Ige as well, where he won. So he's really dangerous at 145. And then Bryce Mitchell just has crazy ground game. And he typically dominates his opponents in that, taking them down, pulling off some crazy submissions and stuff. But, he starts out standing up. I'm curious to see, this is going to, it's a striker versus a grappler. I'm curious to see how this matchup goes down. It is going to be fun too. Mitchell was able to pull off the camo shorts. Not a lot of dudes in the UFC get to do like any kind of customization, like really at all. It seems like they're, you get like kind of a couple different options as far as the fit of the shorts go. We've seen guys like they want to have like the more loose shorts, so they literally cut them. And Bryce Mitchell's like able to pull off getting some camo shorts on. Supposedly it was kind of like short notice too, so that's crazy. And I think if he wins, it kind of puts like this puts him in the top 10, and he's gonna be like in the driver's seat to fight bigger opponents. And then if Barbosa wins, he's also right back in the winning boat. Probably a couple more fights away from potentially getting a title shot. So this is a really fun fight at featherweight. And then more on the card. We've got Kevin Holland making his 170-pound welterweight debut against Alex Cowboy Oliveira. This is fun. I always like watching Kevin Holland fight. It was fun like during the pandemic. 2020 is like when he went on. I think he had 5 wins in the year, just fighting like every other weekend. It felt like tons of crazy knockouts. He had that knockout on his back against Jacare. And then 2021 comes around, and he had a horrible year. I mean, he basically he jumped high, basically into potentially title contention. Like he's fighting contenders. He fought, he fought Vittori and he fought Brunson. I don't remember which was first. But basically both dudes just dominated wrestling. And then like he was gonna take kind of a step down and face a guy that wasn't like ranked really high and fight Kyle Dawkins at the end of the year. And he had that like freak headbutt. He got like basically knocked out by a headbutt and then choked out. And then after the fight, they like reversed it and said it was a no contest. So he's kind of fallen down a little bit in terms of a couple losses, but they're losses to really good dudes and like high caliber wrestlers. And now he's going to be able to go down at 170, like which he cut weight too. He made the weight and everything, and he's gonna, hopefully be able to rejuvenate his career and get some more wins. And then Cowboy Oliveira is a legit dude too. He's also on kind of I think it's a 3-fight losing streak. But he's been in the game for a really long time. I think it's a good opponent for Kevin Holland's debut at that weight class at least. And then, this is the card that's going to open up the main card, or the fight that's going to open up the main card. This is Sergey Spivak versus Greg Hardy. Greg Hardy is just super controversial name. People are upset that he's getting another main card pay-per-view event. It's like people are tuning in to watch this dude win or lose. He is he's a well-known name because of the domestic violence issues for sure, but also because he's a former NFL player and like was a good NFL player at that as well. So people tune in for the fact that he hit a woman. People want to tune in to watch him lose. But he's also like, he's a guy out here saying some crazy stuff. He said he's like the most, I think he said the most dangerous dude in the entire world. Earlier this week, and it's like, dude, there's 15 to 20 heavyweights alone that would smoke you in the UFC even. But we're gonna see. This is he's clearly an athlete. This is a dude who's like cutting a ton of weight to get to 266. Because he's using that pound overage. But he's got the power. He stunned Tai Tuivasa in his last fight. He just got knocked out immediately after because he kind of ran in there. And then obviously like Greg Hardy doesn't have the ground game. So if Spivak takes this down, I think Spivak wins. Greg Hardy's like, the only fight I could remember with him getting taken down was against Marcin Tybura, and he just got smashed on the ground. And Spivak has a lot. I think he's got, I want to say it's 47-48% of his wins are via submission. So this is a dude, like, he gets you on the ground, he's probably going to finish Hardy that way. And if not, like, if he doesn't get him on the ground, Hardy's going to have the size advantage. He's going to be probably 40-50 pounds heavier than the dude. I think Spivak weighed in at in the 240s. So at the minimum, like right now, Hardy's 20 over, but he cut down to 266, so he's probably going to be even more than that. So if it stands up, Spivak has the ability to knock him out too, but I feel like that would kind of lean in Hardy's direction to give him the win there if it is a stand-up fight. But nonetheless, it's going to be exciting to watch. And then I want to talk about a couple of the prelim fights. Jalen Turner versus Jamie Mularkey. I think this is going to be a fun fight. Jalen Turner is huge for 155. I saw a video on UFC Embedded where he was like shaking hands with RDA, and he looks way bigger than RDA. Like he could be fighting like a class or two above RDA. So I think that'll be a fun fight. And then Brian Kelleher versus Umar Nurmagomedov. This is Khabib's cousin. I'm pretty sure Khabib's going to be cornering him. But Kelleher is actually like pretty good ground guy. Like in most of his fights, I think that I've seen, he's wrestle a heavy approach. But his nickname's Boom too, so he's got like the knockout power. So I think it's going to be an interesting matchup. Brian from most of the fights I've seen him, they've been at 135 though. So this is at 145. So we'll see how how much bigger Umar is when they get into the octagon and everything. But I think that's going to be a fun fight. I'm curious to see how the grappling exchanges play out and everything. And then moving on, let's talk about some NFL stuff. First, I want to cover like the big player news. Amari Cooper is reportedly getting cut. I want to say like 5 days into the new league year, which is like sometime in the middle to late March. Amari Cooper is gonna like be due, I think, $22 million guaranteed if he hits that time. So the rumor is the Cowboys are going to try to move him before then if they can. If they can't get a trade partner, then they're probably just going to cut him outright. And that's big because like Amari Cooper is an elite wide receiver. He's a true number one wide receiver. And as a Jets fan, it's like I would take Amari Cooper in a heartbeat. Amari Cooper would be the best receiver that we've had since Brandon Marshall, and it's not really even close. Like Amari Cooper is a guy that's like consistently played at least 14 games per season. He's had multiple 1,000-yard receiving seasons, multiple Pro Bowls. He would fit like the Jets system perfectly. And like he's a true number one receiver that's hitting the free agency market. The rumor, and well, that's if he doesn't get traded, but the rumor is like Devontae Adams, he's getting franchise tagged for sure. Chris Godwin, supposedly the new news is like the Buccaneers are probably going to bring him back. So like Amari Cooper getting cut, he could very well be the biggest name free agent as far as the receiver position goes. So that's going to be really interesting. I'm really confused to why like the Cowboys would be giving up on him so quickly. Like they traded the first round pick for him, they gave him the extension, and he's been pretty good for Dallas thus far. Like he fits really well having CeeDee Lamb as well. So now they're going to kind of rely on CeeDee Lamb and then bringing Michael Gallup back, who's going to be coming off of a torn ACL. So, I'm curious to see how, all that plays out for Dallas. And then I want to cover some of my favorite, like, things that went down at the Combine. I'm just going to cover the first day. So this was QBs, receivers, tight ends. Whoever was recording the 40-yard dash times, I don't know what was wrong with them, but they got some of these like way off. It's crazy. So Tyquan Thornton from Baylor, he ran an unofficial 4.21, which would have beat the NFL record for 40-yard dash. And then they ran things back, and the official came out, and it was a 4.28. And I mean that's still super fast. I want to say that ties where Chris Johnson was at. I think Chris Johnson ran a 4.28, which that was the record for a very long time. So he's still super fast, but like to be that far off. And then one that's even bigger is like the Chris Olave. Chris Olave ran a unofficial 4.26, but it turned out to be like a 4.37. So they were way off. And Chris Olave didn't even run the second time because he was so confident. Like, you guys just said I ran a 4.26. Why would I run a second time? I just basically tied the NFL record, like was close to the NFL record as far as the 40 time goes. But like, I think this class is this draft class is it's an interesting one for sure. There's no like top candidate QB as far as like an Andrew Luck goes, or even Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Mahomes. Nobody's like really talked about in these classes. There's a couple like pretty good QB prospects, but they're not like, saying they're top 5 picks even. Like Malik Willis. People are in love watching this dude throw the football, but from all the reports, they also say like, he probably needs to sit for a little bit before, coming in. He shouldn't be like a day one starter, which I think that's going to benefit a guy like that, who's trying to develop his game. Maybe he slides to a better team and he's able to sit for a year and then come in and come out his second year really well. But so you have Malik Willis. He decided not to run the 40, which it's fair. Like most of these, like these guys that are QBs that are known for like this is clearly the fastest dude in the draft. They hardly ever run the 40. And I think Like Lamar did it. He didn't run the 40 a few years ago, and his excuse is kind of like, these dudes are trying to talk to me like I'm a receiver. I'm not a receiver. I'm a QB. So like Lamar, it was, that makes sense. And then like Kyler didn't run it, and now Malik Willis doesn't run it. And like to be honest, I want to say like RG3. I remember RG3 running like a 4.4. But a lot of these like really fast QBs, they keep their like speed on the low. Like they're not really running the 40 to letting people know like how fast they are. Um, but Desmond Ritter, another top QB, he ran a 4.5. I think that's faster than many expected. He's also got a really good arm, so I'm curious to see where he lands. And it seems like all the NFL teams have different like out input as far as like who's their top QB on the draft board. I've heard plenty of names go around. So I mean, it's one of those things like we probably won't see until the NFL draft. And then some of the other positions that I think are pretty good. The tight end class. There's a few dudes that I'm excited about. Trey McBride, in my opinion, is the best tight end from everything I've seen. He's very versatile, great blocker, good receiver, good after the catch. I think he's got all the tools you want for a modern day tight end. He didn't run the 40. That was like really the only thing I didn't see him do. But one of the other dudes is Greg Dulcich. He's like a big body. Looks like he's a really good receiving threat. I don't know if he's as good of a blocker as McBride, but also I haven't seen a whole lot of tape on him, so I could be wrong. And then another name that kind of popped out to me was Jelani Woods. This dude is 6'7". I think he ran a 4.6 40. It's pretty fast for a dude that big. I want to say he was a high school quarterback. So he's a really good athlete. And 6'7", that's huge. That's a huge tight end. So I'm curious to see, how this tight end class goes. And then as far as receiver, now the receiving class, I will acknowledge, like, I don't think that there's a top dude in this class. I don't think there's a Jamar Chase or a Jalen Waddle in this class, even a Devontae Smith. I think like the last couple classes, they probably have higher top end, but I think this class also has a lot of really good receivers that could potentially be, legit NFL players. You got a lot of dudes right now are kind of hating on Treylon Burks. He didn't have the best like times on the 40 and everything. He ran a 4.5. It's just funny though, because like if you actually look at like the top receivers in the NFL, what kind of 40 was like Devontae Adams running, DeAndre Hopkins, Debo Samuel, AJ Brown, these dudes that Burks gets compared to, they all ran in like the 4.5 range. So like speed at the receiver position, it's very important, but like whether or not you run a 4.3 or a 4.5, it doesn't mean like this is the end of the world when it comes to your prospects of an NFL career. I don't think that NFL teams hold as much weight into like 40 times as some others would think. I do think like, sometimes like someone going out there and having a crazy 40 for sure will boost their draft stock, but I don't think like Burks having a 4.5, I don't think that hurts him necessarily. But maybe I'm wrong. I guess it could depend on the team as well. But that's just what I've been looking at these receivers a lot because I'm a Jets fan and we could definitely use another outside receiver. So I'd be curious. Like I think Burks would be a nice pickup. Garrett Wilson looks really good. He also ran a pretty good 40. I think it was a 4.37. And then like one of the best like dudes at the combine, Christian Watson from North Dakota State. This dude's 6'4" and he ran a 4.36. That's crazy. And I think this dude's kind of he's not been talked about near as much as some of the other names because he's from North Dakota State. And then just to kind of talk about some of the other big names I saw, Bo Melton had a nice 40. Sky Moore, I think it's Jahan Dotson from Penn State. He looks really good out there. Calvin Austin from Memphis. He's a smaller guy. He also ran a low 4.3, super fast. And then one thing that I thought was pretty cool to see, George Pickens, he ran a 4.47. This is a dude who tore his ACL, I think earlier in 2021. So he's like coming fresh off an ACL tear. He didn't really play too much for Georgia this year. I know he played a bit in the playoffs and everything, but to run a 4.47, that's pretty impressive. And he's a big dude too. So that's just kind of my takes on the NFL Combine thus far. Here in a couple days, like when I've got a chance to dive into the running backs and all the defense, the linemen and everything, I want to make kind of like a post Combine mock draft. We'll dive a little bit deeper into the NFL prospects and what I think things are gonna how I think things are gonna play out as far as the draft goes. And then we also got NFL free agency coming up here in a couple weeks. So this NFL season, like, I know it's really long away because we're months away, but like the off season's kicking in, the gears are turning. We only got a couple more weeks, and there's going to be a ton of fun things to talk about. By the time the draft happens, which I think is at the end of April, we're going to have, potentially talking about Aaron Rodgers on a new team, potentially talking about Deshaun Watson on a new team, like big name quarterbacks on new teams, all the free agency moves, how's the draft going to go. I think once free agency goes down, we'll have a better outlook on what teams need and whatnot as far as going into the draft. But there's a lot to be excited for. As always, thanks for tuning in. If you like the content, like and subscribe to the video. Let me know your feedback. What do you think? What fight are you most excited for this weekend? What do you think about the Combine? Who are your favorite guys you've watched? Just kind of let me know your thoughts. But as always, thanks for tuning in.